Appreciate that, thank you. So the way I'm going to talk through this is I'm going to focus on what the risk is to the northern end of the island, and then talk about some of our ideas for mitigating that risk going forward. We have many climate effects that are that pose threats to New York City. Heat is among them. In particular, one of the effects, or one of the risks that the city faces, given that 4 out of our 5 boroughs are islands, is the risk of flooding. So this map obviously shows the whole city. As we head towards the 2020s and 2050s and sea level rise increases, the floodplain, that is the area that is expected to flood in a 1% chance storm, so not to be too technical, but a storm that has the chance of occurring, has a 1% chance of occurring during any given year. That doesn't mean there's only going to be one storm of that size, but the likelihood is 1 in 100 that it will occur. For reference, Sandy was a much larger storm, but was also a bit of was unusual in several regards. Including the timing of it, the way the tides were when the storm came in, the way that the wind was blowing particularly, and then the direction the storm came at us.
Would you call it the perfect storm?
I don't think I would go that far, especially with the press in the room, but it was but it was certainly quite a storm. Generally, when we're talking about the extent of the floodplain, we're talking about planning for this 1 in 100 event. Roosevelt Island, in particular, in the current FEMA flood insurance maps. So the flood insurance maps are essentially the official documents that govern what the floodplain is. You can see that most of the expected flooding occurs at the north end of the island, and a little bit at the south end of the island, where there's already some mitigation work going on as part of the former Goldwater development. And I think that it's planned as part of that construction. So you can see there's a little bit along the edges, but generally the risk to the middle of Roosevelt Island at this point in time is not particularly high. Particularly when you compare it to other parts of the city. I was showing this map before, you can see that ocean-facing areas like Coney Island, the Rockaways, the ocean-facing sides of Staten Island have a much greater risk of flooding than we see in the more protected parts of the city. Even so, during Sandy, we did have a lot of flooding at the north end and a lesser amount down at the southern end. But that flooding at the northern end caused a lot of facility damage to the Fuller Hospital. It ended up, water was coming into the basements, you had a lot of electrical equipment that was damaged, mechanical equipment that was damaged. And as part of that process, it is unfortunate that the damage occurred, but it has given us an opportunity to better protect the facility going forward. And that opportunity is set up for 2 funding sources, essentially. One is a FEMA-related funding source, and the other one, this community development block grant money, actually comes from HUD, Housing and Urban Development at the federal level. I'm highlighting these because I want you guys to understand the types of the types of funding we have and the restrictions that are imposed with them. So this FEMA piece on the top, essentially there was a long negotiation between the city and the hospital, between the city and FEMA regarding the adult care facility. And that there was a scope developed for a certain type of work, and according to that type of work, there was money allocated to the hospital for us to be able to spend on repair, but also on mitigation to make sure that we don't end up with this type of damage event in the future. The Community Development Block Grant is also federal Hurricane Sandy relief money that we're using as local match. So it is going to be a portion of the project. It's mainly going to be used to cover design. A large portion of the project is going to be FEMA. So we're looking at 2 options on ways to protect Fuller. This is the general outline of the hospital. Under our current conditions, the hospital, HHC, bless you, controls about a 5-foot perimeter around the entire edge of the hospital. We can protect the hospital. I'm sorry, I keep calling it a hospital.
Yeah,
it's an adult care facility.
It's a long-term care facility.
Sorry.
Or a skilled nursing facility. It used to be a hospital. Right. Just call it a facility.
I'm just going to call it Kohler. Right? I catch myself every time I do it, but only after it's come out of my mouth. So this is the perimeter color. So there's a 5-foot extent around the perimeter of the facility that we can protect the hospital with.
The color.
With. But in order to do it, we would essentially have to build a wall. Right? With having that much space, you're looking at this distance from the perimeter of the building. The only way to protect the facility in that way would be to build a wall around it. It's not particularly attractive. It cuts off general access to the community. It would reduce the amount of light that comes into the rooms of the facility. And again, for the residents of the island, it wouldn't be particularly attractive. Because this is a FEMA 428 program, that 428, it's FEMA speak, but effectively what it means is that it gives us some flexibility in the way we spend the money, as long as we meet the goals of mitigation and the protecting the hospital. So what I'm going to walk through in the next couple of slides is essentially another option to protect Kohler while also providing a lot of benefits to Roosevelt Island, to the residents here. So, and I want to stress before I get into this that these are very preliminary. They are renderings. They are an idea of what could be at the north end of the island. And the could be is a really key piece for us right now because it means that we have the capability in working together to actually figure out what we want this design to look like. Now, there are certain things that you can pay for with FEMA money, but as long as you are meeting your overall goal of protecting the facility, all of the edge work that we're talking about here, and actually this proposed design is essentially the creation of a berm, so an elevation of the shoreline all the way around the perimeter. This, by elevating the shoreline, and what you're essentially doing here is and I'll look to the back because we have some technical folks here, so if I say anything wrong, please let me know. We have the capability to essentially, we're going to raise the elevation of the shoreline, and to do that you are adding in, you're essentially adding fill to that area. It's dirt or whatever it is that goes into constructing, but it raises the shoreline, and when you're doing this type of work, it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of what do you actually want this to look like. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip through just a couple of renderings, and again, these are preliminary thoughts that our designers came up with. They're by no means set in stone, because as part of this development, we can actually figure out what we really want these to look like as long as we continue to protect the hospital. So one benefit that may be able to come from this would be access to the water, which I'm not sure tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I don't think at this point there's any way to get down to the water on the north end, or possibly even anywhere around the extent of the island. And so jump in. So this rendering obviously is, you can see in this part here that there is actually a significant amount of elevation above the water, but this carve out here would actually allow people to walk down and get to the water. It's something that it would be feasible to do as part of this project while still providing that protection benefit that the FEMA funding cares about. This is just landscaping that's possible. There's a path that runs through. This is, I guess this is standing on the north end and looking south, because I think I can see the bridge in the distance. And from the side of the hospital looking north, the lighthouse in the northern tip, obviously. What this ends up looking like in the end is essentially up to the collective planning efforts. And I know I've said it before, and I'm going to keep reiterating it because I just want to make sure that the message is clear. Within the FEMA funds, there are certain things that we can pay for, but we can be creative with the ways we do them. There are also, in other projects where we've had this type of funding, we work with other local elected officials to provide, so the FEMA funding, for example, cannot buy you new kayaks. But if you can work with your local officials to launch some sort of program that goes there, and the official pays for it out of the discretionary funding. So there's ways to patch together different pieces here to develop this overall plan. I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of an overview of schedule, and I'm sure you guys are going to want to come back and talk about this spot, so we'll do that during the Q&A piece. This is probably a 4 to 5 year project. As part of every FEMA project, and really every major construction project in the city, there's an extensive environmental review that will take place. And anything that's discovered during environmental review, there'll be mitigation that follows on that as part of the design and construction. Design on a project of this size is probably 1.5 years, and then there'll be 2 years of construction that would follow. Essentially, we have the opportunity to provide flood risk mitigation to the northern end of the island, and we can do it in a way that benefits the residents of Polar and also provides benefits to the residents of Roosevelt Island. We can improve the way you're accessing the water, improve your access to green space. I know there's been interest expressed in continuing or improving on the quality of the entrance to Lighthouse Park. And so we can do all of this, but we need to, in order to do so, it would be a collaborative planning effort between everybody. So that's the end of the slides, and we can go into Q&A here if you guys want to, if you have specific pieces you want to focus on. Again, obviously I'm up here from the mayor's office. We've got folks from Health and Hospitals Corporation and from the city's Economic Development Corporation. The Economic Development Corporation is managing this project on behalf of the Health and Hospitals Corporation. And then also we've got some folks from Arcadis, which is the design firm that actually did some of these initial renderings.
You see